And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. We are live. Welcome to another Reasonably Fine Art Talk with your friend Charlie Hunter. Oh my goodness, I just looked up and it was 1:45 p.m. It was 1:45 p.m. and I was a little bit in a different part of my life. I am a justice of the peace in my little town in Vermont. And today is the day of the tax abatement hearings, and I was just printing out all the documents. And like any good little small town, some of the documents are printed on two sides and some are printed on one side. And so it's been very confusing getting them all sorted out, but I think they're all sorted out now. Anyway, it's a joy to be here. It's a joy to have you guys here. Do put up a lot of comments if you can. I'm not sure I can see all the comments because I use this is on three different platforms. It's on YouTube, it's on Facebook Live, on my art page, and it's on Facebook Live on my personal page. And I'm not sure if comments show up or not, but if any comments show up as I am talking about today's topic, I will answer them as best I can. What I thought I'd talk about today is that I've got an opening. Hi, artists, wherever you are, I can see your comments. I've got an opening in Santa Fe this weekend. I guess it's on Friday night at McLarry Fine Art, and I'm not going to be out there. I'm not going to be out there, ladies and gentlemen. But I thought I would talk a little about. People have asked how one puts together a show, and I'm not sure I do it right. But this is how I go about doing it. But before we proceed further, let me show you a quick perusal around the gallery. And I can see Jim Roth's comment. Hi, Jim, at the stage. This is a quick perusal around the gallery of the show. The gallery itself is a lovely space on Canyon Road in Santa Fe, down at the base of Canyon Road. And I initially went with this gallery about 10 years ago because A, they wanted to have me, and B, they had bathrooms open to the public. That collection of galleries, Meyer's the best known in our world, Meyer and McLarry. But I figured in a world where people are looking for a place where they can use the John without paying, any gallery that had public restrooms was a good idea to go with them. And they've been wonderful partners. They hang shows beautifully. The main room, this is the main room, and they don't overhang. They do a different show each month, and that is the central motif there. Charlie Hunter, The Earth Remains, with a painting called Pantherville, and then smaller paintings on the sides. And then I think we wind up back where we started. John, who works at the gallery, sent this over today. Yes, we end up with that one. All right. That's the end. That's the end of the quick trip through the show itself. But how did I choose to put that particular show together? Well, thank you, Seth Tummins, who says that's a beautiful display. Jim Roth says looks great. I did a slideshow of, let's remove that and let's put this one up. I did a slideshow of the paintings that are in the show, and I will talk about the thesis of the show now. The title of the show comes from a quote from Edward Abbey's Desert Solitaire, and it is, "Men come and go, cities rise and fall, whole civilizations appear and disappear. The earth remains, slightly modified. The earth remains in the heartbreaking beauty where there are no hearts to break. I sometimes choose to think, no doubt perversely, that man is a dream, thought and illusion, and only rock is real, rock and sun. I think that's a great quote. I don't think I don't think my artwork is actually the perfect artwork for that quote, but I'm the only one who paints my stuff, and I wanted to call it that. So what I'm going to do is kind of go through the show itself, and that little tour that we saw of the show. When this is over, I'm going to put up a slide. I should have added it to this slideshow, but I ran out of time. Put up a slide of the roam with the show. But the show is hung. The team that makes up a show is the gallery, the artist, and the framer. Actually, I'm going to make my head bigger for a moment, as if it wasn't big enough already. I'm going to make my head bigger for a moment, and then I'll go back to the slideshow. The artist does the paintings, obviously. The framer presents them, and the gallery hangs the show. Last year, I wanted to go out to Santa Fe and do a bunch of plein air paintings. I had done a show in September of 2023 at the gallery in Northampton, McLarry Fine Art, that was made up entirely of paintings that I had done on site in New England, where I grew up. And it was very well received. It was mostly the little 6x12s that I like to do. And it was mostly monochromatic. And I had done several shows in Santa Fe before, and it was coming time to do another one. The gallery that I show at, McLarry, their philosophy is basically to do one show a month, one primary. They've got several rooms, but that main room, when you walk in, it's to your left, down a couple steps. That main gallery switches every month. The big time for Santa Fe art is the summer and autumn. This show is a little bit before the busiest time of year. So I am not one of their marquee artists. I'm like a utility second baseman or a utility infielder. I'm a pretty good hitter, but it's, singles and occasional doubles. Not really. I'm not a slugger. I am not the $25,000 painting guy. And so it makes less sense to have me be one of their big summer artists. But I've done well for them, and I'm continuing to do better and better for them. So I'm slowly moving up. So now I'm like right before prime time. I'm not batting cleanup, but I'm not at the bottom of the lineup either. So I sat down with Chris McLarry, John Knox, and Quincy, Quincy is my primary person who I share ideas with, but I actually don't know her last name. But they're three of the. It's obviously Chris McLarry's gallery, and then Quincy. Well, John is the one who hangs the show, and then Quincy is sort of my person. And Quincy and I sat down last fall when I was out visiting Santa Fe, and we scheduled the show, and we talked about what would work in this time slot. And we agreed that doing a bunch of really kind of personal paintings on site really was the way to go. Now, I'm just checking people's comments. What I can see right now, it looks like I'm seeing Seth, who is on YouTube, and I'm seeing Helen Sixak, Jeff Williams, Catherine Kitsmither-Nor. Hi, Catherine Kitsmither-Nor. So maybe I'm seeing Facebook and YouTube just fine. But if you do have questions about what I'm saying, put them in the comments and I'll try to answer them. Anyway, so it was decided that what really made sense was to do a show that was mostly direct observation. So the first image, I'll go back to having the slideshow now. The first image is a great big studio painting that was not done from life. And it also has very little to do with the Earth remain. Well, it's the ghosts of mankind's presence, but it is not directly in relation to uh, the thesis of the show, which is the nature. Um, why is it in the show then, Charles? Well, because even though I'm not the $20,000 painting guy, the gallery does want a couple of marquee paintings. And I sent them a file of maybe eight large paintings to choose from. And this was one that they felt it was consistent with the look of the rest of the show. And they chose one vertical and one horizontal of this size. And I trust the gallery at this point. They don't overhang a show. They know what their audience wants to buy or what it tends to buy. They know what is going to look good together. I gave them probably a choice of, well, as I said, about a half dozen big paintings and a couple of other large pieces. And then I said, you are getting all of these smaller pieces. And that actually seemed to work very well. My friend Tim Oliver likes this painting because I have bullet holes in the vein, in the wind vane of the windmill. This is Pantherville, which is the central image in the show. And ironically, this is based on Colorado and New Hampshire. But I believe it is universal enough that people find it, in the response I've gotten, people find it resonates enough that they feel like it's a place that they know. And that is what one always wants. The title Pantherville comes from the great New Hampshire songwriter Bill Morrissey. And I think it's the first song on his second album. Look at the framing on these pieces as well. My framing is done by David Putnam at Claremont Custom Framing in New Hampshire, in Claremont, New Hampshire, which is just north of where I live. And actually the view that inspired this painting, even though it doesn't look like it, is on the drive back from David's office back to Bellows Falls. But David has done all my framing for a dozen years now for gallery shows, and I really, really trust him. I don't even question, we don't even discuss what the framing is going to be. He takes care of it. It is important to me not to have really florid frames because I am interested in presenting my work as being more toward contemporary as opposed to classical or traditional painting. I am real traditional for contemporary art, but I'm a little bit contemporary for the more traditionalists. Does that make sense? So these are 4 of the 9x12s that I did. So I did 2 separate trips to New Mexico in the last year. Now, this is not literally what the wall looks like. I grouped them together for this slideshow. But these 4 paintings were done in early 2025. And this was after a week with, well, the one in the upper left was done during the Rattlesnake Gang get together in Terlingua. And it's of a mountain that I painted sort of obsessively during that week. The other 3 were done following that. I drove from Terlingua up to Santa Fe and then painted in Cerrillos and Villanueva State Park. I've discovered, ladies and gentlemen, painting in state parks is where it's at, because no one yells at you. You know, like, you can. If you paint along the side of the road and you have some disgruntled landowner, they will argue with you that you can't paint there, even though it's within the right of way, and it's just annoying. Whereas if you go to a state park, you can just paint away. Now, Jeff says, can you talk more about your framing when you choose to use plein air frames, when you use a framer, how different frames for large versus small works, etc.? Yes, I'm happy to do so. When I do a plein air event, I am looking for something that is as quick as possible. At Plein Air Easton and San Angelo and a couple of other events, Pat McDaniels from JFM Frames comes up, and he is a treasure, because he'll help you frame your stuff even if you're not buying frames from him. He will provide D-rings and wire. He will just be very, very giving. And so I have started using his frames when I am at an event that he is at. If he is not at an event, I am looking for a frame that will be as inexpensive yet decent looking, not look like everybody else's frame, and be really easy to put in and put the painting in. And I tend to use Ambiance Galleria wood frames from Jerry's Artorama. You can buy them in boxes of 4 of various sizes, and you do have to drill the holes and wire them yourself, but the paintings just clip into them. They're just a simple black or natural wood frame. They look fine. They're a little clunky, but they look fine. For a gallery show, I do want custom framing. The smaller paintings, let's see, I'm just going to finish reading this. When you use a framer, how different frames for large versus small. Okay, now I'll make that go away. For a gallery show, I want the frames to really have a presence and enhance the work. These smaller pieces are on floaters. They're about 1.5 inches thick, so it gives them a real, I'll use the word presence again. But the frames do not get in the way of the paintings at all. The frames also do the job that a frame needs to do, which is to protect the painting. I have David inset the image about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the frame, so that the wood is protecting the painting surface itself. Jeff agrees with my comments about Pat and JFM. Anybody who deals with Pat, he is a treasure. He's a wonderful person. And then your other part of your question, Jeff, was about different frames for large and small works. Yes, for something like this size, 9x12, that very, very thin border is great, and especially with the thick side, the wide side. But it would not make sense for a big painting. The big paintings, I'll go back one. This one, that is a double wood frame. There's a thicker, darker, David uses different stains, but I think it's all cherry. but a darker outer frame and then a thinner, so it's two pieces of wood. They're expensive as hell, but they really look nice. This is a close-up of the last painting I did on that run in February at Villanueva State Park. I was really happy with this painting because it was not anything I planned out in advance. It was one of those rare 1 in 50 paintings that, no, I am not talking to someone on the phone now. And I'm going to shut off. Hang on a second. I'm going to go into airplane mode. Should have gone into airplane mode before. There we go. It was one of those rare 1 in 50 paintings that I didn't overthink. I didn't know what it was going to look like, and it turned out the way I wanted it to. And it used color very, very organically. And that was one of the joyful things about painting with the rattlesnakes for the week, is that I started using color, but not because I felt forced to in any way. These are 6x12s from that same February trip. Again, the top left one is Toole Mountain at Big Bend National Park. So that was, again, done on site. All of these were done on site, but it organically wanted to be in color. And that sort of opened the door to my working in color for that whole trip. The two on the right are from the Cerrillos State Park, Cerrillos Hills State Park, which is great little state park. Not many people, nice vistas, obviously. And then the lower left one is up at Pecos National Monument with the interstate humming right behind me, but no one's going to know that. Jeff asks, do my prices absorb the cost of custom framing, or do I increase my prices for this type of gallery presentation? That's a good question. I would say I increase the prices for this kind of presentation. The 6x12s for this show are $1,960. Why $1,960? Because the frames each cost $160. So they would be $1,800, which is my upper end for a 6x12, but it's still under $2,000. So it feels to me like a pretty sweet spot. For a small painting like this, I don't want to go over $2,000. The gallery gets half, so I'm not even getting that the full 160. I'm only getting 80 of it. Art major, not math major. Have to think about that. But if I do a 6x12 at a plein air event, depending on the event and the market, it'll be between $750 and $1,400. The normal, with a less custom frame, with a less fancy frame, they'll be up to about $1,600. So this 16 to 18 now. And so at 18 plus 160, it's 1960. Let's see. Andy says, beautiful work, Charlie. Framing looks simple and elegant. Thank you. Do you ever paint on paper for oils? I just got a pad of Cobra oil painting paper. My reductive way of painting doesn't tend to lend itself to painting on paper. Oil painting paper, which tends to be quite absorbent as opposed to moving the paint on top of the surface. But the Cobra painting paper is more canvasy, and I had some good luck with it recently. That said, I also do like painting on Yupo, but that tends to be very, very stylized paintings. Yupo, for those who don't know, is a plastic. It's a sheet of like melamine, so it is not absorbent, but it's fun. And JB says the distance and the horizons in these are very subtle and well done. Thank you, JB. I tried to make good paintings. Now I'm going to go back up, make my head smaller again. Next slide, Charles. Oh, those of you wondering where Betty Sue is, she is driving today. She and the James McMurtry Band driving from Boise, Idaho to Portland, Oregon, which is 6 hours and a half if you don't stop. And there are fires in between Boise and Portland. And so driving for 6.5 hours and then schlepping gear and merchandise and doing a show tonight. That's where Betty Sue is. Anyway, then we have the 6x12 oils and encaustics. These were from the first trip I did in autumn of 2024. The first trip I did for this show. And I went up to Las Vegas, New Mexico, which I really like. It is 75 miles from Santa Fe. It is still kind of, they're very rough around the edges areas to the town, but it has a feel of that old Western town. And then I took the paintings home, and then I messed around with them with the encaustic. But to quickly go through these, upper left is looking down Railroad Avenue in Las Vegas, New Mexico. The one on the upper right is La Castaneda, which is the old railroad hotel in Las Vegas that had been derelict for about 30 years and it's been brought back to beautiful life. The lower left was as sun was setting, even though it doesn't look it in that painting. Sun was setting, and I painted down toward an ironworks and a highway overpass. And over on the left is the community garden, and the guy who ran the community garden came over and had a nice chat with him. And then the lower right is a little tiny town called San Jose, New Mexico, which is between Santa Fe and Las Vegas. And an old friend of mine from music business days now lives there in the house that had been owned by, was it Russell Banks? I always got Russell Banks, Russell Means, and Don DeLillo, and a whole bunch of people all mixed up. But I think Russell Banks was the American Indian Movement guy, and he had very, very, very good internet. My friend is very pleased at how good his internet service is. Andy says, yeah, I've been painting on Yupo. Really love the sliding of the paint on the surface. Zero absorption, like painting on copper or aluminum. Yes, that is true. If you haven't done it yet, ladies and gentlemen, it is fun to do. So anyway, took these home, put encaustic on the surface, and then did some staining. I think I've got a close-up of one of these paintings in a minute after the next four. The other place I painted a lot, well, two other places. Again, Cerrillos, which is my favorite little town outside of Santa Fe. It's very, very, very quiet. The downtown area is gorgeous and ramshackle in the best possible way. So the top two are Cerrillos. Then the bottom two are along the route of the Santa Fe Railroad at a road crossing called Hoyo de la Vaca, which means eye of the cow, literally, but means cow spring. And years ago, a high school friend, Monica McCoy, lived out on Hoyo de la Vaca. And whenever I would take the train through to Santa Fe, I'd pass Monica's house. And so this is the first time I ever returned to that crossing and did 2 paintings. And there's just something really fun. So all 4 of these are railroad paintings, all 4 of the Santa Fe Railway line, which many of you know. I did the Entraîneur thing with Larry Moore and Shelby and Amy Anders Erickson and Jason Sacran and Randy Sexton. But revisiting the railroad line that I've been on the train over this so many times, but to revisit it, painting along there was really rewarding. This is the one of San Jose, New Mexico. So it's one of my regular plein air monochromatic pieces, then taken back to the studio in caustic. Charbonneau, Charbonneau, the cat is here. Taken it back to the studio, added the encaustic, and then rubbed my usual mixture of like Van Dyke Brown and raw umber into the surface and hit it with spray bottle, and just it basically distressed the surface a little bit because I really wanted to play up that halfway between a memory and a photograph and a memory, that kind of dreamlike aspect to these. And Jeff says, I love the ground plan and depth in the upper left landscape, as well as the architectural focus in the upper right painting. And that's the previous slide. Yeah, that upper right, the fence and the little adobe are pretty great. I love painting there. Go paint in Cerrillos, everybody. All right. Next slide. Then I went down to Canoncito, little tiny church. Unfortunately, the interstate highway is immediately to the left. Immediately to the left of this, of the picture plane right here. And on this one, I kind of, even though I was not inside another structure, I kind of wanted to do a picture within a picture. It just felt, I just felt like doing it that way. That's why. So Helen says, very atmospheric too. Wonderful. Thank you, Helen. Anyway, that's a little 8x10. And then this is when you come into McLarry, when you walk through the door, this is in the entryway. And this is called Solitaire. Let me move myself out of the way entirely here. And again, it's a stylized version of that mountain in at Big Bend, even though it is the shape of the actual mountain is quite different. But that is definitely the inspiration for this. The post on the left, I put that in there because it was just too horizontal. The eye just kind of skittered across the surface without something to stop it. And that actually, it solved the problem, I thought. And Artis apparently agrees. Thank you, Artis. And then what? Oh, and here is McLarry Fine Art's info, 225 Canyon Road in Santa Fe, and the hours, which are basically 10 to 5, except on Sunday when they close at 4 and they go home early. But y'all should go to this show. I would appreciate it anyway, and I'm sure the people at McLarry would. So, but the team being me doing those images, the framer, David, interpreting how to display them best. So, and we've decided those floaters with a thick inch, I guess it's about 1.5 inches. Charbonneau, say hi to the nice people. The 1.5 inches thick, 1.5 inches deep floater frames give the paintings a really nice presence, even though they're small. And then working with the gallery agreeing that having a show of predominantly smaller paintings was wise given this time of year. And then I presented to them most of the paintings and then gave them a choice of about 6 or 8 other, well, maybe about a dozen other pieces. And they chose 4 of them. And then I let them hang it. I do not second guess them. John Knox has a beautiful, beautiful eye. And I know it's going to look fantastic. Now, you may ask, why am I not, excuse me, Charbonneau, why am I not going to the opening? I am not going to the opening because Quincy and the McLarryites said, candidly, until the really busy times a year, we're going to have the people who are going to come out to the opening are going to be the people who come out to the opening. Your presence there is not going to inherently move the needle. And knowing that it's quite a journey for you to come from Vermont to Santa Fe, we would rather have you expend that energy to come out for a time when you can do paintings, because both they and I agree that the Santa Fe market is best served with paintings that have some Southwestern reference. Not a lot of big market for covered bridges in Santa Fe. Now, Jeff had some other question here or statement. I believe you referenced some of these being encaustics. It's difficult for me to decipher online which of these are encaustics. Can you help identify which are encaustics, or perhaps discuss your use of encaustics and your intent in doing so? Yes, I thought I did, but I'll go back there right now and we'll discuss those again. That's an encaustic. That's an encaustic, and we'll just stick with that one. Why encaustic, and my intent in doing so? Encaustic because it adds a definite atmosphere. If you're used to cold wax, it's pretty similar to cold wax, except even more so. And it really diffuses the light. So these plein air images that look so much like an old sepia photograph, it's leaning into that. That's why I use it. And if I'm going to charge right up against that $2,000 price point, I think it makes sense to do that with either a fully chromatic piece or a treated monochromatic piece. The unencausticed monochromatic pieces may look a little unfinished to the casual visitor, whereas with the encaustic on there, it really looks very considered. And I also love the way it looks. So that's why I do that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think that takes us through what's going on with that show and why you should go to that show, and you should say hi to Chris McLarry or John Knox, or find out what Quincy's last name is for me. Stop on by. It'll be up for about a month, and they've got some other pieces as well. I hope that's useful. If you got any more questions, just throw them in the comments and I'll check back later today and try to answer them. And Charbonneau would like a treat now that we're at the end of the Reasonably Fine Art talk, and I think that's a nice thing to do. And then I've got to study tax abatement requests for a couple hours. We'll see you soon, ladies and gentlemen. You take good care. Thanks for joining us for another Reasonably Fine Art Talk. Bye-bye.